Our next fireside chat is, again, with workforce development. It's exploring workforce solutions in manufacturing. I'd like to welcome to the stage Mike Braun, Director of Employer Partnerships with Accelerate Montana, John Freer, Director of Trades Education at Missoula College, and our moderator, Paul Gladen, Director of Accelerate Montana. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Mercedes Bodden. I'm the Marketing Director for Accelerate Montana. Paul Gladen wasn't able to make it today, so I am here with my colleagues, Jerry Busey, Mike Braun, and John Freer, and we'll be discussing workforce solutions in manufacturing. Now, guys, can you give us some background on Accelerate Montana and how that organization came to be what it is today?
You bet. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to spend the day with you and let you in on some of the stuff that we're doing at Accelerate Montana. Let me just ask, before we get started, who before today had not heard of Accelerate Montana? Just a hands up. Oh, some people. Okay. Just a few, but it's worthwhile just giving you a little bit of context around how we came to be and what we are doing today, which obviously a lot of my colleagues will also weigh in on. But we are affiliated with the University of Montana. Accelerate Montana was the portfolio of economic development services that we have at the university, including the World Trade Center, the SBDC, PTech, and some other programs focused on entrepreneurship, including the Blackstone Launchpad. Prior to the pandemic, we started to get involved with some corporate partnerships, one of them being our training program for ATG, the Aim Higher program that the governor has pointed to plenty of times. Really, this was a 12-week program to get folks upskilled or trained, prepared to be Salesforce implementers for ATG, and that was a private-public partnership that up until today continues. It is in its 9th cohort, and we have put over 200 people through that training, and they've all been hired at ATG at a starting salary of $55,000. That one was sort of the cosmic tip-off for us to get more involved with some of the employers, and lo and behold, the pandemic kind of accelerated that. There we really came in on some of the support issues when it came to, first of all, obviously all the PPP loans, and then really saying, how can we help? How can we be there for not just the community in our backyard, but really for Montana in general? Just over a year ago, we received a grant, an ARPA grant, for $6 million to focus on 4 specific sectors. It's healthcare, manufacturing, construction, and technology. But we are working outside of those. So we're trying to be market responsive across the board. You'll hear from our colleague Linwood Fields about what we're doing in film and production as well. But really, how can we either help folks get rapidly trained up for jobs that are open, that our employers are looking to fill, or then upskilled, right? So how do we make sure that we have a skilled workforce, especially as things continue to change? With that $6 million, which then we received another $2 million, we really spanned our statewide footprint with outreach coordinators, one of whom is Jerry, who's sitting right here, and she'll talk a little bit about the outreach coordinators and the jobs that they're doing in their backyards, in their regions, and in their communities. What we're trying to do with the rapid training, as I said, is really be an alternative to the higher education system, in that it's 6 months or less, trying to get folks skilled up and then into these jobs that can hopefully try to get them into positions of a wage that's around $50,000 or more, right? So sometimes that means that it's sort of bite-sized trainings, and then there's ongoing training that needs to happen. And then in other cases, we do have fully baked out trainings. John here will tell us a little bit about the Job Site Ready. We also have something called the Montana Code School, and we're trying some other things also specifically in manufacturing, including CAD training, so get folks really trained up on CAD so they can become drafters and technicians in a short period of time. So that's sort of the large overview of Accelerate Montana, and what we'd like to do with the rest of our time is just provide you with some additional detail. John, do you want to weigh in?
Sure, thanks, Mike. And I'm here. My background, I'm the director of trades education for Missoula College at the University of Montana. And prior to that, I spent about 25 years in building and development. And so my focus has really been on construction and trades related. And I think there's a ton of parallels to what we're going through in the construction industry and the manufacturing industry. And some of the things that we've done to tackle workforce issues are really the same things that we're also working with Accelerate to tackle in the manufacturing sector. And so Michael mentioned the Job Site Ready program, and it's one that we've started deploying across the state. And I think when we first started looking at construction training, when I started at the university, I certainly thought I knew a lot more about what we needed as a state and what we needed in construction training. And we learned pretty quickly that we really couldn't satisfy all of the employers all of the time, but there really was a sweet spot that everybody needed the same type of training. And we worked with a lot of different industry partners in trying to develop what were those day one skills, those basic employability skills. And it's exactly what I think Ken had mentioned earlier about trying to find that workforce that's manufacturing ready. That's really what we tried to do in the construction industry, is start at the biggest part of the funnel and really start to raise career awareness, try to get some of the really foundational skills that would start people on those pathways. And so I think right now we've had, I think just in 2023, we've had about 80 candidates complete the program, 140, 150 last year. We just finished, the Department of Corrections just finished their second cohort. We've started spreading this around to the other MUS campuses. And it's really a way that we're looking at trying to, again, work within different partnerships and different collaborators. I think one of the things I always say about what we need to do with workforce training is it's got to be an investment, it's got to be a collaboration, and it really does have to be a holistic pathway that reaches the candidates everywhere that they're at. And so the first part of that, and really where it's an investment, if you're a company that's looking for the quick fix or the silver bullet to get people to work for you tomorrow, it doesn't exist. You really have to think about it as a long-term investment. The second part is that it is a collaboration. There's no one entity that's going to be able to do it all. We have to look at the resources that we have and the things, and I think it was, I don't recall what his name was, but he mentioned about trying to point the fingers at the school system or the industry. We all need to point the fingers at ourselves and start to recognize that it is a collaborative effort, and we have to use and deploy all the means that we have. And so, Mike mentioned a little bit, you talked about rapid training as an alternative. I see it more as a complement. There are certain things that the university system can do, and we can do those really well when it comes to training. There are certain things that rapid training programs can do, and there are certain things that can only be learned when students are out in the field, when they're on the job, and when they're actually learning. And then the last part of that really is that in Montana we've got geographic challenges, we've got resource challenges, and so we have to look for ways that we can meet all of the candidates where they are. And that's both physically in a location, but it's also where they are in their career path. And so I think that's really where one of the things that we've enjoyed is being able to look at the holes that we can't fill. We can't do all of the training for all the people, but where are those pieces that, whether you're a manufacturing firm or a construction firm, any type of industry, it's working together to find those pieces that we can fill in, and we all have a role in that.
And to that point, we do have a little bit of an issue in this state just because of its geographic landmass, and we only have 1 million folks. We're trying to be the connective tissue the chamber's trying to do that? How do we make sure that people know about the resources that are available to them? How do we make sure that there's maybe resource sharing, or that at least we can pull in some of the right partners into the conversation just to make sure that everybody's working together rather than spinning their wheels by themselves? So to that point, as I said, we do have our outreach coordinators across the state, with Jerry being one of them. Do you want to talk a little bit about your role?
Hi, I'm Jerry Busey. I know many of you from different tourism segments and chambers across the state. I have been working with this program for not quite a year. So there are a number of us, and 5 of us are geographically allocated across the state with 12 to 15 counties apiece. So I work kind of in central Montana, really working with Gallatin College and Helena College as our 2-year partner training providers. So when I first took the job, I thought it was really about spreading the word about rapid trainings and finding opportunities to help create more of them. As I've been doing the work, it really is, as my colleagues have talked about, really creating, doing capacity building with our partners. That means really getting out there and listening to what employers need, what's already existing along those lines, how can we work with other programs within Accelerate Montana to do more with that. How can we help the colleges do more outreach or build capacity, particularly because all of these programs are not credit bearing. That we do credentialing and all sorts of things. So it's a big, heavy lift for the colleges to provide these when it's not necessarily their absolute bread and butter of what they do every day. So how can we build more capacity? How can we pull things out that they're already doing in training and offer that as a rapid training? So really just exploring options, listening to what they already know in the communities they serve, really working with our job service, because there's also ARPA funding that will pay for folks to take rapid trainings. And that's CTI in this area also pays for youth programming and training. So really, and Department of Labor also has a business outreach team that is just coming on board. So how can we all do our part to connect the dots, find funding to get more courses offered, expand how our partners can do their outreach and get the word out there, and listen to employers and what's already available, where are there gaps that we could do a little more to invest in things around the tourism industry, the agriculture industry, leadership development, and those kinds of opportunities, and look to our employer partnership to do that missing piece that really has to engage completely with the employer to do exactly what they need, or customize things that are based on their employee culture. How can they look more into what people need in addition to a living wage? What are those things that would improve the culture or make their place more attractive to work at? More flexibility, daycare on site. So really getting out, particularly in rural communities, and learning what people really need. What are the barriers to their workforce? Where are they having trouble? And how can rapid training play a part in that? How can we engage with Department of Labor, other institutions, other resources at Accelerate to solve some of those challenges and look at all of the problems or challenges or opportunities and connect people together with all of the organizations statewide to make that happen in each geographic location. So there's 5 of us that are regional, and we do have a table over there so you can get contact with all of us. One of my colleagues, Linwood, will be speaking particularly. So there's 5 of us geographically that work on all industries. Then there's one coordinator that works exclusively in the construction trades on the JSR program and all things that are going to develop around that. Then we have a media coordinator, and you'll be hearing from her a little bit later. And then we have a couple that work exclusively with our tribal communities and have that split up across the resources.
I think
So
you make a really good point that I don't think we ever thought of when the inception of these things were going on. It's not about selling training across the state. It's really about becoming the web of information. And we found out really quickly how helpful that was with the JSR program. There's a lot of talented people across the state. There's a lot of passionate people and companies that they're doing training. They're doing a lot of really good things. But if we don't know about that, we have a hard time sharing it. And so with the outreach coordinators, we've been able to have quite a few partners across the state. We've got Blackfeet Community College. I mentioned the DOC. Helena College are probably going to break the record of having the largest cohort of JSR in April. So it's just really getting the word out and learning how we can share the tools that we already have in place, and where we don't have those tools, how we can work to fill those pieces in.
Thanks, Jerry and John. Mike, I want to ask, you work directly with employers on their training needs. Can you fill us in on what types of solutions we've been able to offer them?
Sure. Yeah, so employer partnerships is the part of Accelerate Montana that works directly with for-profit, nonprofit, and government agencies to really do bespoke trainings. So this is anything from workforce assessments, where we go in, try to understand what those missing skills are, to then coming up with tailored solutions. I'll tell you, the number one training over the last 3 years has been project management, just because the workplace went kapooey, right, during the pandemic. So we've been doing a lot of that statewide and outside of the state as well. So thank you, Ken, for that plug. The other one that I heard earlier today, the other one that's really on our radar these days is emerging leadership training. So a lot of folks were obviously promoted into positions of leadership, but not really with the skills of leadership. So they were really promoted into positions of failure. So how do you actually get your emerging leaders and managers to occupy that role, right? So that is what we call a power skill. Some of it is workplace communication. How do you effectively learn to communicate up and down and across the ranks? How do you coach, not play? How do you understand the difference between management and leadership? So we're doing a lot of that kind of training. And then also we've been doing a lot of programming with Glacier Country Tourism around customer service essentials, as well as conflict management and resolution, understandably so, given some of the summer seasons that we've had. So again, what we're trying to figure out is really work with the employer in partnership to understand what their needs are, and then come up with a kind of training that meets the employees where, when, and how they learn, right, and make sure that it actually moves the needle. So this, again, is very tailored, and if anybody has any interest in that, please just approach me and I'll tell you more about it.
Thank you. And we'd like to thank the Montana Chamber for having us here, and we'll open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
I'd love to hear from anybody around some specific workforce challenges, or then how you've actually overcome those. Like really, boots on the ground, some of the innovations, because that to me has been some of the most eye-opening stuff when sort of the desperation happens and people come up with really cool solutions. Yes, sir?
How do you measure success?
That's a great one. So that one, we hear about that all the time. And we're instituting both pre and post assessments, right? So we understand, at least from the trainee, whether they're learning the skills and then applying them. So that's one way that we're trying to do it. I mean, sort of the knee-jerk reaction is higher productivity, or I don't know, better bottom line, right? But you're not going to get that. So really, it's around that training and whether that skill or competency is actually landing, or whether they're applying it. And I would say to that point, that one is it's a complex issue, because it's both the individual and then sort of that combined workplace that obviously has to learn how to work better together, right? So there's a lot of cross-pollination, a lot of cross-training that has to happen there as well. But yeah, we're doing it right now with pre and post assessment. One other thing that I'll tell you though is, it's been interesting to work with these digital badges that we've been issuing. And initially sort of the thought was that the trainee or the employee would like to sort of post it on their LinkedIn and say, look, mom, right? But what's happened is that it's really become a dashboard that provides employers with a visibility into the skills and capabilities in their workforce. And it gets to that granular level where now you can see, wait, what are the skills? What other skills do we need? Where do we need to upskill? Or even sometimes if there's a new project or a new program that's being launched, can we take these skills and put them over there, right? And I think one thing that I've learned over the last 5 years in this is that training is one thing, but really training and development, meaning the ongoing development, is where you get the needle moving, right? It can't be something that you do as a one-off. We all know of organizations that say, here's your LinkedIn Learning, good luck, that's your training, and then nobody does it, right? So you really need somebody who will take ownership of that training and development and make sure that they shepherd the trainees through that. We use success coaches in our programs, and it's really those success coaches that help make sure that that training is delivered and that it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, you bet. I mean, as yes, for the rapid training, we definitely do. So when we're doing any kind of, getting folks ready, we're actually being measured by that, by the state. So that's our one of our outcome variables. So we're looking at how many folks are being trained, and then whether we're placing them, and trying to get as much information also in terms of their wages and everything. So I gave you the example of the ATG AIM program. Obviously, we're tracking that one. We're doing the same one with JSR. So yeah.
You can also, Helena College is here today, and largely a lot of the rapid training programs we are doing in partnership with colleges, or some of them that JSR in particular, as we offer them, there are employment opportunities built into that. So with JSR, sometimes employers can use that training to onboard their employees. We're using it in high schools, but we do that in partnership with Helena College. There are employers can leverage those trainees and interview them at the end of training, and the employers were also very much invested in building the training out, so they get to see the fruits of that labor of putting the training together and then hire them right out of the building right after the training's over. And then we're also on the on-site portions getting engaged with community projects to build out cool things that are needed on fairgrounds and this and that with the trainees that are finishing the building project in their own community where they live.
Yeah, and I want to wrap up and answer that too from my perspective. I think you have to measure it long term. I go back to what I'm talking about as an investment. It's not always about how many people you get through that revolving door of training. Again, it's about how successful are they when they get into the workforce, and do they have a pathway that they can continue on. And so I think longevity and just the long-term success is what my answer would be, and how you measure that.
Just on the topic of sharing resources, because I think that's where we're just missing out as a state, is you don't know what you don't know. I wish there was a platform for all of that to go into one shared space. I'm sure somebody right here will snap onto that. I teach at Montana State University. And thank you, Mark and Ollie, for giving me that opportunity. And we have a new college of business that's a 5th-year master's program, but it's focused on STEM students. So it's focused on engineers in undergrad. I'm getting ready to launch 30 in 8 weeks. So if anybody wants a Montana kid who's bright, ready, wants to work hard, wants to stay in Montana, I am thick with those kids. Please come find me. I gotta get them all launched. They'll have to go work with you.
That's good. So what, is that your plug?
Yeah, just from a shared resource.
Oh, right on. Sure.
Because they're all now, with some of the unsettling of the last many weeks, and then of course they're reading everything that's coming out of the tech sector on, layoffs. I'm like, you guys gotta block that out. You live in a state where that is not what's happening in your backyard, right? We are not seeing waves of layoffs in the state of Montana. We're seeing the reverse. We have people desperate to hire smart, hungry, local, Montana-minded people. and they're all 20, 21, 22. Most of them raised in the state. Most of them want to go to work in their backyard. They just want a great opportunity.
So you're managing their expectations?
Yes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And you know, I came out of the higher ed, so I used to teach at the College of Business at UM, and one thing that I did as part of a workforce task force in 2020 was to go around to the representatives of all the industry associations that made up the largest sectors, employment sectors in Montana. And I will tell you one thing, the one gripe when it came to the higher ed was we understand that we have students with majors, but we don't understand the skills and capabilities that underlie those majors or those degrees, right? So I think higher ed in general, and we're trying to build those bridges from both sides, has to do a better job of really saying these are the skills that somebody can bring to the employer. So trying to make that more visible and more tangible has become a priority for us.
Yeah, I would agree with that with MSU also. So this program is they literally have everything from capital raising to human resources to leadership to marketing to branding. It's literally that well-rounded, 2 semesters of like, this is what it takes in the business world. Like, that's great that you have an engineering degree. I need to know how to read a P&L. I don't need you to be a CFO, but you need to know how to read a balance sheet. And I need you to be involved in the recruiting process and be you have to be part of that process for your future organization. And so they're picking up those disciplines.
Well, just this morning I was on a call. It gets even more base than that. Just basic Excel. Please teach our employees how to use Excel. Okay, come talk to me about that too.
Thank you, Jerry, John, and Mike. If you guys have any more questions about Accelerate Montana and the rapid training programs that we offer, we will have a booth out in the hall later this evening.